My fundamental issue with that is that he gave a life to service. And yes, you can say that he misspoke. You can say that he lied. You can say all of these things. I just don't like or appreciate the caricatures.
Well, wait. J.D. Vance served in the military, and you just sat here and called him weird without being able to tell me why.
No, I can actually tell you why.
Okay.
I think the reason that I would
does that prohibit you from being called a name?
No,
I'm just asking.
No, I just think that the reason I would call him weird is the infatuation he has with women who have no children. Yep. I think the infatuation he has with my wife's vagina or her uterus or her cervix or the fact, no, it's not a come on. I mean, that is exactly why I would.
In today's video, Bakari Sellers absolutely takes down Scott Jennings and Brian Lanza on Newsnight with Abby Phillip in a heated back and forth that lays bare the huge flaws in MAGA's political thinking. What begins as a talk about J.D. Vance and his so-called authenticity quickly explodes into a fierce showdown as Bakari calls out the constant hypocrisy, lies, and pure fantasy that fuel the MAGA movement. Jennings and Lanza do their best to protect Vance's image, but Bakari refuses to let anything slide, cutting through their weak defenses with clear facts and straight-up honesty. So let's get into it and see how Bakari Sellers completely shuts down Scott Jennings and Brian Lanza on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
J.D. Vance was an effective communicator throughout the debate. I think that's why poll after poll you see his favorability rise, because there were a lot of things that you saw in the deepest, darkest parts of the Twitter sphere and internet that showed that he was this weird guy. And I fundamentally believe that he is this weird guy.
That he is or isn't?
That he is.
Why?
But
he wants to believe it.
I think he's.
What's weird about him?
I think he's so slick that he's intellectually dishonest, and I think that it oozes off of him. But that's fine. I think last night, one of the things that J.D. Vance did last night, which people do not give enough credit for, he didn't help Donald Trump. Like, let's not even talk about that. Like, he did nothing for 2024. What J.D. Vance did, though, was solidify himself for 2028. And so anybody who thinks that he helped out the person who he's running as vice president for is silly. And I think both of you all know that.
No,
I think Tim Walz, and let me just stick up for my guy for a second. Of course. Tim Walz did a more than admirable job. He showed up. He was affable. People liked him. And I actually, before Scott weighs in, and what irks me to my core is when people talk about individuals with language that I don't think suffices, buffoon, just ignorant, etc., for somebody who served in the military, for somebody who's been in the classroom. And look, we can disagree on policy, but my fundamental issue with that is that he gave a life to service. And yes, you can say that he misspoke. You can say that he lied. You can say all of these things. I just don't like or appreciate the caricatures.
Well, wait. J.D. Vance served in the military, and you just sat here and called him weird without being able to tell me why.
No, I can actually tell you why.
Okay.
I think the reason that I would
does that prohibit you from being called a name? I'm just asking.
No, I just think that the reason I would call him weird is the infatuation he has with women who have no children. Yep. I think the infatuation he has with my wife's vagina or her uterus or her cervix or the fact, no, it's not a come on. I mean, that is exactly why I would call him weird.
No, but the reason that I think he has such a jump in favorability, it wasn't that he was that damn likable or impressive. It's that he was a weirdo to America prior to this. Whether the couch stuff is kind of whatever it is, but the way that he is fixated, but the way he's but that's not the point. The point is whether or not it's true. The point is whether or not it's at the forefront of people's minds. The way that he's talked about women in this, all that stuff was at the forefront of his minds, and the debate allowed him to talk about things that mattered a little bit more, even if he was up there not necessarily telling the truth all the time, without the things that people find to be weird to be so prevalent. So I don't think he looked. I don't think it was great. I think he came off so bad before this.
Everybody came away from this debate saying, okay, they were so nice to each other, they were so cordial, this, that, and the other. And actually, to Bakari's point about the tone.
In this intense exchange featuring Bakari Sellers and Bomani Jones going up against Scott Jennings on CNN Newsnight, Bakari and Bomani clearly take the lead with sharp insight and real emotional depth. And honestly, it's hard not to agree with them. Jennings tries to paint J.D. Vance as strong, effective, and honest, but that angle ignores the obvious contradictions in Vance's entire political identity. Let's be real. J.D. Vance has spent years reshaping himself to fit into the MAGA world. And this is the same man who once compared Trump to cultural heroin, yet now stands as one of Trump's most loyal defenders. That level of political flip-flopping isn't strategy, it's pure opportunism. Bakari nails it when he calls Vance intellectually dishonest, because no amount of polish can hide that much hypocrisy. Jennings claiming Vance secured his position for 2028 only shows how empty the GOP's idea of authenticity has become, where it's no longer about values or truth, just performance and raw ambition. Bomani adds even more depth by highlighting Vance's strange fixation on women's bodies and motherhood, a mindset that crosses into uncomfortable and intrusive territory, backed by Vance's own remarks about childless women and his moral judgment over women's choices. And while Jennings tries to spin it all as charm and relatability, Bakari and Bomani remind everyone that being smooth doesn't make someone a real leader. Because what this country needs are leaders with integrity, not people willing to bend every principle just to please their political idols.
Of politics. Okay, here is J.D. Vance today, not on the debate stage, talking about Tim Walz.
Now, it's funny because, we did this debate, and then I talked to the president afterwards, and we talked a little bit about, what actually happened, and, some of the points that I made, some of the points that Governor Walz made, and he made this observation. He said that Tim Walz said that he was friends with school shooters twice. And I said that was probably only the third or fourth dumbest comment Tim Walz made that night.
Okay, so just first of all, that was clearly a mistake. Tim Walz had actually just talked about how his son had witnessed a shooting, and J.D. Vance admirably expressed shock and condolences about that. But he was looking down at a piece of paper, reading that comment. I mean, it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, I think I don't want to call names, but I do have other adjectives to describe J.D. Vance. I think he is dishonest. I think he is disingenuous, and I think he is disrespectful. I'll start in the reverse. I think he is disrespectful because he does talk about women like me who are single without children in a very disrespectful way, and says that I'm like a second-class citizen and I don't have anything invested in this country when I have been a public servant for almost 20 years of my life. And I think you consider me a friend, and you would think I do have a lot to give to this country. I think he's disingenuous because he thought Donald Trump was Hitler, and now he's his running mate. Now, you can change your mind, but that's a big leap, okay? And I think he's dishonest is because he was up on stage and he is fact-checked over and over. And we know that the lie that he made about Haitian immigrants was so hurtful and dangerous to that community that if you want to have a conversation about immigration, have it. I don't need to call him a buffoon, a weirdo, or anything, but that is not the type of person I want to be second in command and maybe take over because we have an old president in office.
Okay, so everybody seems to be worried about J.D. Vance and dishonesty, or Donald Trump and dishonesty. I never hear the same concern about Harris and the lies that she tells about Trump, or in Walz himself, who gave the most disastrous response to a question about his own dishonesty about being in Tiananmen Square that I've ever heard in a debate. He also did the same thing with Dana Bash when questioned about dishonesty a couple of months ago. And effectively what he has said is, sorry, guys, I'm too dumb to tell the truth. I mean, he called himself a knucklehead. I have bad grammar. This is a guy who holds himself up to be a school teacher and a coach. Is that the life lesson he's giving the kids that are under his care? Hey, you can lie, and then you can just kind of slough it off as being, too dumb to tell the truth. I think we spend 99% of our time going down rabbit holes about Vance and Trump and honesty in campaigns, and we spend no time at all holding Walz and Harris to the same standard, and I don't understand it.
I'll explain to you the difference. The difference is that when you lie about whether or not you're in Tiananmen Square and where you were in Hong Kong or China during that summer,
or your military service, or receiving an award as citizen of the year in Nebraska.
Or the fertility.
Like, there's a lot of issues with him lying.
But the difference is that Amber Thurman is dead. And so there's a big difference. And so when you want to say
what does that have to do with him lying?
But you want to say that somebody embellished about their record or where they were during a particular time. When I tell you that someone wants to determine what a woman does with her body and her reproductive rights, when I tell you that someone talks about having a national abortion ban and then gets on the stage and lies about it, and then when I tell you that Amber Thurman should be alive today, right? And so, yes, I would castigate right now if Tim Walz was in front of me, and I would say, you know what, that was the poorest answer you gave in the debate. In fact, I said that this morning. I said on Casey's show, I said, look, that was the poorest answer he gave. But if you want to talk about the gravity of the decisions people make when they're vice president of the United States, I would rather have someone who misspoke and caught themselves up in rhetoric and said, I'm a knucklehead, than somebody who actually lies about an issue that would determine whether or not my wife, daughter, aunt died during childbirth, because those things
In this heated showdown between Ashley Allison and Bakari Sellers taking on Scott Jennings on CNN's Newsnight, the debate erupts as they confront J.D. Vance's lack of honesty and shaky moral compass, with Ashley and Bakari making it clear that Vance's pattern of lies and hypocrisy goes beyond politics and becomes genuinely harmful. Jennings tries to shift the spotlight by bringing up Democrats like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, insisting they're dishonest too. But that argument falls apart fast under real examination. Ashley delivers a striking point about how Vance's remarks insult women, especially single women without kids, by suggesting they care less about the country's future. A mindset that isn't just sexist, but shows just how disconnected parts of the GOP are from the modern world. And the fact that Vance once compared Trump to Hitler, but now proudly stands beside him, reveals a level of opportunism that has nothing to do with values and everything to do with chasing power. When Jennings tries to blur the lines by attacking Walz for exaggerating his background, Bakari quickly shuts that down, reminding everyone that stretching a personal story isn't even close to the same as pushing dangerous misinformation that costs real lives. Bakari points to women like Amber Thurman, who died as a result of harsh anti-abortion laws backed by people like Vance, proving that this isn't political drama but harmful policy with devastating consequences. In the end, Ashley and Bakari stay grounded in truth and empathy, while Jennings resorts to empty whataboutism, highlighting that real leadership isn't about pretending to be flawless, it's about honesty, compassion, and genuine accountability.
Fundamentally matter.
Yeah, I think that seems like a fair point.
Well,
I mean,
here's what I would say to that
the lie
point.
about Tiananmen Square
Here's
all of that is first of all, it was a terrible answer, but that is not relevant to Americans' lives going forward.
Well, here's the answer, Bakari. You know, when Kamala Harris says, listen, I no longer support fracking because Joe Biden supports fracking, we say we have to believe it is biblical. Donald Trump does not support a national abortion ban. His administration is not going to go anywhere near that. And so why aren't we giving JD the same benefit that we've been asked to give Kamala Harris?
He said,
Kamala Harris, by the way, said,
I want to ban
fracking.
Statement.
Kamala Harris herself said, I want to ban fracking. It's my values to ban fracking, is what she said.
I'm literally giving you a story about a woman who died while trying to give birth to a child. And your response is fracking.
No, my response is you have to treat both of them the same way. If you're saying Tim Walz's lies don't matter, and I think they do because it goes to this is the first decision she made as the nominee. She chose somebody who's clearly can't be stress tested, who's clearly lied about his military experience, who's clearly lied about awards he's received so much that the Chamber of Commerce of Nebraska had to come back and say, listen, you need to stop doing that. Who's now lied about his experiences in Tiananmen Square. I'm sorry, that was a bad choice by Harris.
I was about to say. I don't.
Bomani, let me give you a second to.
I would just say the argument that Trump's not going to do this when he gets in office. That is a dangerous phrase that I thought that by now we had learned not to say that we know what Donald Trump will or will not do. Then what is too far? I don't know. You sure you know that?
In this powerful segment, Bakari Sellers goes head-to-head with Brian Lanza on CNN's Newsnight, and the moment quickly turns into a lesson in calling out weak logic and false comparisons. The discussion heats up as Bakari passionately highlights the real-world consequences of J.D. Vance's anti-abortion stance, pointing to women like Amber Thurman, whose deaths reveal the cruel impact of extreme policies. Lanza tries to shift the focus to unrelated topics like fracking and Kamala Harris's past positions, clearly trying to cloud the truth instead of facing the seriousness of Bakari's point. But Bakari refuses to let the conversation drift, stressing that there is a huge difference between a politician slightly adjusting a policy and one whose agenda puts lives at risk. When women's rights are under attack and lives are being lost because of it, comparing that to changes in energy policy isn't just misleading, it's morally empty. Lanza's claim that Trump and Vance deserve the same benefit of the doubt as Democrats like Harris falls apart quickly, as Bakari reminds everyone that these situations are nowhere near morally equal. Vance's lies and extreme positions aren't just political, they threaten basic freedoms and human dignity. By the end, Bakari's moral clarity and determination stand in stark contrast to Lanza's deflection and whataboutism, driving home one undeniable truth: policies have real consequences, and leaders who ignore the humanity of women shouldn't have power over their lives.